Hello again. Happy to say the front end is now built back up again. The new brake calipers are on, considerably nicer than the old ones. I've remembered where all the bolts are, I've got all the washers, there's no brake fluid in it, but everything is freed off and spinning, and I must say it looks really good. It's all clean and shiny. Ignore the wheel, this one's not going back on the bike. I have another one hiding down there. This one is just too far gone, there's some thin spots in it thanks to corrosion. And then yep, same again on this side, all ready to go. Even the little combined braking cylinder. So next thing I think we're going to do is rebuild that rear master cylinder, and then we can have a go at bleeding the brakes, which should be fun on a bike with combined brakes and ABS. So I'm going to go and get set up on the bench to do that, and I'll bring you back. Okay, with a cap of brake fluid on hand, in theory this should be as simple as following the instructions. So first piece is going to be the spring, and it's got this washer on the end of it, which mates up with this first piece of rubber, which as you can see has a kind of point in it. So pop those together, and then I'm just going to drop those down there. Tiny bit of brake fluid on top to lubricate that. Next is the piston, and it goes with the cup end down, which accepts the ball on the rod. And you have to put the seal on this on some of the kits, so you want to make sure the void in the seal, or the kind of trough in it, is at the back. That's so that when fluid is in here under pressure, it pushes the seal outwards and makes a seal rather than pushes it outwards, or rather than pushes it inwards, sorry, and allows it to leak past. So it goes in next. And the spring is going to want to press it out. So the next thing is this rod. You're going to want to make sure you've got the dust seal on it. And then this is going to go down, and the last thing in the kit is a circlip, which is going to hold this washer back and keep everything inside. Bear with me, going to do that off camera because it needs the vise. And so just like that, the rear master cylinder is back in the bike and all connected up. There's no real mystery to it, it's just two bolts. Stick the unions back on and reconnect the reservoir. I put some brake fluid in here and in the front, and I've left it for, well, it must be about 6 hours now, with the nipples on the calipers open, and actually already I've just nipped them up. The fluid has started to find its way through, and we've started to get some breaks at both ends. They're going to need a real good bleeding, and I'm going to have to look up to see if there's any specific procedure for the ABS, but as far as that goes, we should be good. The other thing I've done is drop the tank in because it was getting in the way on the floor. Just nipped the bolts up and connected the fuel line, because this was kinked off before, in such a way as to make sure that it didn't let vapour out into the garage. While we're here, and it's a complete change of subject from the brakes, but I'm just so fed up of being covered in brake fluid, I'm very quickly going to check the time, and make sure we're not going to annoy anyone, and we're going to balance the carburetors. So first of all, I'm going to have to reattach this shoddy jumper wire, and at some point in the near future either find another one of these connectors or put some spade terminals on these and get this excuse for an ignition sorted out. But bear with me one moment. Right, so how are we going to balance these carburetors? The answer is using this. This is an SK synchrometer. I've had this one since I had my first Pan-European. It lives in a box, but it's kind of handy because it's the same size as most of the carbs that I play with. And what we're going to do with it is we're going to stuff it into these carb boots and use it to measure the air that's flowing through them. If we balance the air that's flowing through all the carbs, then we should have balanced carbs. The way we do this on the Pan-European is, this is where the throttle cable comes in. So this is the first carb to receive the pull of the throttle cable, and the rest have these little screws that you can just about see down there that basically offset them from this carb. So the shaft goes through, then the shaft is connected in the middle by this little flapper with the screw on it. I think if you tighten it in, it lifts it back. That opens this carb a bit more. And then there's also a rod that goes across between the two, and there's another couple of screws for this one and this one. So what you have to do is start with this one, measure it, and then next one make it the same, next one make it the same, next one make it the same. The only thing to be really wary of on the Pan-European is you see this boot, this is for carb number 1, it goes up and it's over there. So we actually want to measure this one first, then this one, then this one, then this one, or this one, then this one. I can't remember which way around it is. But it should be as easy as that. So what I'll do, first of all, is I'll pop this in, I'll start the bike up, and I will get the RPM up off of idle, just so that none of these carbs are sitting on their stoppers, because that can get in the way as you're trying to adjust them if they bump into the stoppers. So let's do that. We'll take a reading. Normally you wouldn't stop the engine while doing this, but I need to talk to you and you probably can't hear me over the engine. So that was about 6, I think. We're going to move to the next one and see if it's the same. So normally you do this with the engine running. Okay, hopefully you can see what I did there, and it turned out that they're actually fairly closely in balance, which means I must have counted the turns correctly when I took things apart and put them back together. We just had to bring this one just a little bit up, and it brought the others into it. You probably heard the engine started to run smoother as it became more in balance. Sometimes when you put the carbs back together, these things run on 2 or 3 cylinders and it sounds awful. But that's the long and short of it. What you should now do is go back through, do them another couple of times, because often as you change the latter one, the first one starts to change, and then of course when you do wind the idle back down again, it all changes again. But that's the rough idea. There's a fantastic write-up of this on the ST1100 Owners Club. There's also a write-up in the Haynes. The two are different. One's right, one's wrong. I'm not someone to say which is which. As long as the engine sounds nice and accelerates smoothly after I've done this, then I'm quite happy. But that's a rough overview of balancing the carbs. I'm sure there are going to be plenty of things in the comments about, you know, tips and tricks for how to do this, and please, I welcome them so that we can all learn. This is a very rough job. I'm going to go away and do a much better one when I'm not trying to wave a camera around. That also proves quite nicely that our fuel pump's working, and the astute among you may also notice the exhausts are back on, because I didn't fancy it sounding like a Panzer tank in here while I was trying to balance it, and I doubt my neighbours did either. So where are we going to go next on this bike? Good question. I want to try and get these parts out a bit quicker, especially since I want to get this bike off the lift. So I think I'll bleed the brakes off camera, because I don't really want to be covered in brake fluid and trying to do that while holding you lot. After that, that's a good question. There's a lot of finicky little bits and pieces that I need to do on this bike now. Reconnect the throttles, sort out the wiring. I will bring you back and forth for ones of those that I think are interesting, but for the majority of the kind of button up and refitting, I'll probably leave the camera down because it's just really boring stuff. It's going to be, you know, reconnecting and cleaning connectors and stuff like that. There's a couple of bolts still need to go in on the engine cradles as well. I need to sort out the wheels because the front one is an absolute state. The back one is not much better, so they need to be either refurb these ones or possibly grab another pair off the web. We'll see. There's also the small detail of having to weld this back together. Looks like it's been cut for some reason, not sure why. And then after that starts the arduous task of putting the fairings back on it. I'm really not looking forward to that. So we'll see. I'll either cut this bit out or this will be the end of the part here. But thank you everyone for sticking around for this. It's fairly boring work, to be honest.